but you can hear me. So we roll. Amy?
I've started the recording.
Thank you. So Mayor, we are ready to commence.
Right, let's call this meeting to order for the Capital Planning Commission for May 7th, 2026. I'm Julie Hoy, Mayor of Salem.
I'll just do a roll call real quick. Mike Abate?
Here.
Jan Calloway? Not here. Senator Patterson is not here. Jim Bauer?
Here.
Jeremy Miller? Not here. Shane Griggs?
Here.
Michael Slater? Not here. Mayor, you're here, and Representative Mannix is not here. We do have a quorum. So first item up for business here is Oregon School for the Deaf. And I'm going to drive their presentation, so just give me a second.
And this is a comeback to us, right? I mean, this is the group we met with about, what, 2 years ago?
2025, early.
Yep.
You have met with them under different circumstances. This is in regards to their capital proposal for 27-29.
And so they'll put this in their proposed budget, right? Agency proposed budget with a pop.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is it good to say who else is in the room? I haven't met you, I don't think.
I have met you before. I'm Betsy Einhold. I'm the director here at
Oh,
DAS.
great.
It's just been in different spaces.
Okay.
Yes, it's good to see you again.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, sorry, I'm Robert Underwood. I'm DAS planner.
Okay.
And I'm presenting the second item on the agenda.
Oh, great.
Third.
And I'm Melissa Garner
Okay,
from the
perfect.
Department of Education.
All right, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you as well.
See, Amy, this is why when you leave me by myself, it takes me too long.
You got it. Perfect.
All right.
We all know I'm just there for moral support.
Yeah.
Stop it. Okay, I'm just not gonna fiddle with it. You're good to go, Melissa.
Okay. Mayor Hoy and members of the committee, my name is Melissa Garner. I'm the Business Services Director with the Department of Education. And in that role, I'm the Capital Construction Contracts Administrator for the School for the Deaf. ODE is a policy and technical assistance agency for the school districts in Oregon. We don't have direct supervision of them in any case, except for the School for the Deaf, which OSD operates as a department of the agency. They behave like a school, but they are a department. Next slide, please. OSD has been around since 1870, and they've been on the campus that they're in right now since 1910. So they've been there for quite some time. Students belong at OSD. They're members of a rich community surrounded by people with whom they can communicate all the time, which is not usually the case when they're at home. Sad, but true. Go ahead. OSD operates in both ASL and written English for bilingual instruction. It's a language-rich environment. They have an average enrollment every year of 100 students and an average residential enrollment of 50%. So it's roughly around those numbers every single year. It's a little different this year, as you can see. All of the deaf students in Oregon are eligible to come to OSD, and OSD sets the standard for deaf education statewide. They have multiple programs and services at OSD. One of those things is ASL classes for mostly parents, but also interested community members. 30 plus years ago, I went to OSD for 3 years to learn sign language, and here I am today. So also have an audiologist on staff, which any deaf student can come and use their services. So they have sports. They're members of OSAA for middle school and high school, and their residential students have lots and lots of opportunities, both on and off campus, to be engaged in social and community activities. We also rent the school out to lots and lots and lots of sports programs. So they use the gym, the track, swimming pool. Now we get to a boring slide with no background on it. The facilities at OSD on the campus, it's 37.4 acres. And they have 13 buildings. Well, they have 14. No, they have 13. I say that because we have a greenhouse listed as a building that doesn't exist, but the grandstand doesn't exist as a building. It's very confusing. So there are 13 buildings. They're just not necessarily the 13 buildings that DAS knows about. The newest of them was built in 2010 by Extreme Makeover Home Edition. But the newest state invested building on campus is 1974. So it's over 50 years old since the last time the state made a full building investment at OSD. There has been a lot going on in the last couple of years. Go ahead, next slide. We have been listening to what both CPC, CPAB, the legislature, all of you had comments for us about our proposal last time. It's essentially the same thing, not quite, but essentially we still are looking for a residence hall as our main ask for this time. But we've done a lot of work to try to make it easier for people to understand and to make a decision. So these are things we've gotten. We've done everything we can to get ready for construction outside of actually hiring people to do the architecture. So we've got an intergovernmental agreement with DAS Construction Project Management to take advantage of their price agreements and their preferred vendors. It's been fantastic. We have now a contract with OTAC, which is one of those vendors for construction project management, and it's made a world of difference in the quality of submission that we are bringing to you. Some of the things about OSD that have gone into this, again, there are 1,000 students, K-12, in Oregon that are deaf at any given time. And approximately 200 of those students are appropriate for OSD. Not every deaf student needs to come to OSD for instruction, but we are not getting all the students for whom OSD would be the best instructional space to learn. Partly because of the facilities, we know. We will be then designing a residence hall for 100 students, because that's about half of the people that are enrolled. Just a note that all the schools for the deaf in the nation are in roughly the same space as Oregon School for the Deaf, because they all built up in response to rubella. So that was in the 1960s-ish, when late 50s, early 60s when that happened. So lots of deaf campuses across the nation built up at that time, and they're all facing the same problems that OSD is facing right now. Those of them who are ahead of us, who have gone through some of the construction, have seen an increase in enrollment. So this is not just an ideal, like, we think we ought to have 200 kids at OSD. This is actually built on what we've learned from around the nation. But we keep getting asked, have you considered moving? And the answer to that is yes, for about this long, because of two reasons. One, there's no place in Salem that's big enough to move to put an entire campus that includes both dorms and a track and the school buildings. And we have not considered moving outside of Salem because OSD is the center of the deaf culture for the state, not just the educational center in the deaf space for the state. That would mean uprooting an entire community of people to move someplace else. And that's not something that I don't think that's the state's call to make. So, on positive news, we've been working with the Department of Emergency Management to use OSD as an alternate emergency coordination center in the case that the ECC that they have at OEM doesn't work out for some reason. Who knows what reason that might be. They're super excited because OSD has both residents and lots of space to set up a whole communication center if they needed. We've got multiple spaces that they could use. There's things for people to do when they're not working that's there. There's lots of places to park. They're very excited about it. We plan to have an signed agreement with them by the end of December to be able to do that. It would be a memorandum of understanding, obviously centering education first. over emergency management. But in the case that we have an emergency so big that they need to use it for an emergency coordination center, chances are good we've sent the students home. So this should all work out. We've also considered the area plan. This is what you guys care about probably more than most, is the area plan for OSD. It was updated in 2013. And I went through all 6 policies. I'm going to do a brief touch on all of those policies in the area plan to show you that we've actually paid attention to them as we thought through these projects. Policy 1 is focused on using the space we have to continue what we're doing. So we're using empty space on the campus to start the project so that we don't disrupt the instruction that's happening there right now and all the activities that happen there right now. Policy 2 doesn't have its own slide because it talks about using unused space for leases. We are doing that. We have 2 charter schools that are leasing out there right now. Policy 3 has lots of text, which I will not read to you, but it talks about development and engagement. And we have worked with state parks. This is probably one of the biggest things that we have done because that campus has very probably historically significant buildings and possibly some stuff underground that we don't even know exists. So we have started working with state parks and they're been out a couple of times to see the campus, and we're really excited about working with them for the historical registry and how we might preserve the buildings that we need to for the good of the public, actually. If you didn't know, OSD has a 6,000 square foot museum, and it is incredible. They've won national awards for how good it is. So obviously, as we're talking about design, we're going to focus on deaf design and things that are good for people who can't hear but can see quite well. Policy 4 is about transportation. This is probably one of the things you all will be most interested in. And that's because we would anticipate needing to modify the Cherry Street entrance to the campus in order to make it you could actually use it, because that's where the dorm entrance would be. If you're aware, there was a train derailment recently. You might have heard about that. And that was just outside that entrance. So I have pictures standing from inside a playground on campus looking at the train leaning toward the fence. So obviously there's lots to consider around here. This is another reason that we're grateful for OTAC, because they could actually price out what it might look like if we have to put a light in. We have no idea what that's going to look like. Obviously, we'll be working with the city, with the railroad company, anybody who wants to talk to us. ODOT, we'll talk to everybody we need to in order to make that entrance right so that we don't create an additional hazard on Cherry Street, because that would be lousy. Policy 5 has to do with sustainability. We're going to be reusing what we can and adding solar every time we get a chance. That would ideally, if all 4 projects get funded, we'll have 2 roofs to work with. So we put solar on top of them. And then policy 6 has to do with community engagement. This is a piece of that community engagement, but it's certainly not the stop. We'll need to be talking to the community around OSD. If you have ever been to the Nightmare Factory, you know what a nightmare it is to be around the Nightmare Factory when it's in operation, as far as parking. And so this in part will increase the parking on campus for events like that. It's not going to solve the whole problem, but we'll do what we can with the community to see that we can lessen the impact of the campus on the community around it. So what's that led to? All this planning, all this idea, we have 4 projects that we're proposing. They're ranked and they're a little more nuanced than they were last time. Like, this services infrastructure is our top priority for 2.6 mil. This gets all 5 services rerouted through the campus in a cohesive manner. Yes, we are very excited about that. We're going to be using a completely different entrance to the campus so that we can keep the existing infrastructure up and running while we're adding the new infrastructure, and we can cut over once it's ready. There's no way we can finish this in a summer, and the campus needs to keep working. Skanska, go ahead and the next one. Actually, yeah, that's fine. They came out and did a quote for us. It's actually the next slide, but that's okay. They came out and did a quote for us and laid out what that might look like for us. And they did that free of charge. They just came out because they heard we had a need and took care of it for us. And I will tell you, they are not the only ones that do this for OSD. When I introduce architects and contractors, which I'll talk to anybody and take them around OSD and show them, they're all very passionate about making this place a better space for our students.
I thought that was a nightmare factory for me.
Well, so the funny part here is that that bottom picture is the server closet where all the stuff comes in from it's awful. A couple of months ago, they walked in and found a rat, thought it might be a prop, and no, it wasn't. It was a dead rat on the floor. That's the basement of a condemned building. So one of the things we're going to do is move that into one of the actually usable buildings as part of the remodel of the services. All right, next slide, please. This is the plan that Skanska made for us. We're very excited. Yay. So this would route, this is the future view of the campus. This is not the existing view, but we are putting buildings where there are buildings mostly. So we can use this same layout to continue operations for where they are now. If we got this funding at the residence hall and never got anything more, this would still work for the existing structures on campus. Our second project and the most expensive is the new residence hall at 80 Mill. And this is refined from 2025. So Jim, I think you said, isn't this a comeback? Well, yes and no. So we were here asking for the same thing last time, but we've gotten more information and have a better ask. And we're starting over for the next set of bonds. So this is going to be 2 floors in one building. So we talked last time about having 2 buildings, but as we talked to the school and the staff and the students, they all agreed that 1 building would be better. There's an error on this slide. We'll accommodate 100 students, not 200 students. 200 students enrolled, 100 students. Thank you. I don't know that you can change that.
I can't, but I'm just trying to help.
Yeah. Also, we're working with OEM to make sure that the rooms are big enough to house multiple people during an ECC activation or an emergency activation that they would use the campus. This is a conceptual floor plan. It's focused on being modern and comfortable, but not extravagant. In no way would it be extravagant. I just sent Daniel something. I think you're going to be able to send it on. All right. Yeah. All right. So we just like this morning got a copy of a full brochure from Brick, which again, they have done all this work pro bono for us because they just care about the campus substantially. So there's a flyer that explains this in more detail. Next is the map of where it goes on campus. The big map is my lousy rendition. The small map is their professional rendition. So where it says residence hall in purple near the track, that is where the new residence hall would go in relationship to the whole campus. The building to the right of that is mostly square with a little L on it. That's also an unused building that we would need to take out in order to re-engineer the Cherry Street entrance. So we'd be losing two buildings on campus and adding 1. The next project is a grandstand refresh. Go ahead and move to the pictures because they're more interesting. We have a new track coming. That's 23-25 bond money. And we have that contract signed. So they're starting work on the track. It'll be ready in the fall of 27 for actual use by students. But the grandstands are not a match for what the track will be. And we hope to replace this from the concrete up. So we don't need to wipe this out entirely. It works. The concrete substructure is great. We want to take everything from the concrete up and replace it with new finishes, make it actually accessible. I didn't get you a picture of the bathroom out there. You can just imagine a very old student designed bathroom with everything showing, and you've got the perfect picture in your head. The fourth project is an add to the campus. There is nothing like this on campus right now. It's a 100 by 50 foot pavilion that will be between the dining hall and the new residence hall. It's space for recreation and outdoor dining. Having been part of registration for OSD 2 years ago, I will tell you, they will use it with great glee. There's not a lot of space inside the dining hall right now for extra space, and they register on Labor Day. So having an outside barbecue would be great. Right now it's an inside barbecue. So if the next is the map for that, that's where it would be on campus. Again, this is my lousy rendition of it, but there's power on that path, which means that we'll be able to have power there, and the Skanska plan adds power to this space so that it will be a fully functional pavilion with everything that you might need. One last piece of information for you. If we could combine all 4 projects, we save 4.5 million on non-construction costs. By doing all these projects together, we just get an economy of scale. It would be lovely to do all 4, and we know that it's not necessarily going to happen. So that is the end of my report. I appreciate your time and attention, and pending questions, I am done.
I have a question.
Yes,
If I may.
absolutely.
I'll give myself permission. Two things. ECC, what is that?
Emergency Coordination Center.
Okay, thank you. And do students, what percentage of the population of students don't come from Salem?
So 50% are residential. That means they're far enough away, we don't bus them every day. So the furthest away fly in and back once a week, because they live in past Pendleton. So everybody gets to come, regardless of where they live. And then we have buses that come from as far away as Portland to come pick up kids every day. So those districts bring their buses in and pick up students and get them bussed out. And of course, parents come as well.
And they go home on the weekends?
So the students that are residential are there from Sunday afternoon to Friday at noon. They go home at Friday at noon. So they get 48 hours at home. It's just not Saturday, Sunday.
Commitment.
Got some hands up. Jim was first.
Just a quick question. Great presentation, very helpful. Definitely more than what we got last time. So thank you for that. Last time when we were talking about this, we did a lot of discussion about the track area and the issues of drainage and infrastructure. Did the slide that you have about infrastructure take into account those projects and those issues as well?
That's correct, Jim. We have a contract now signed for construction at the track, and that's being taken into account. The company that we've contracted with has lots of track experience, and they're very aware of the drainage problems on the track. They've been out surveying already, so we expect good things.
Good. And just one other, having dealt with a project kind of roughly in that area that had some, and in fact, Mayor, the city was involved in this as well, but some native burials. Has anybody done any ground penetrating radar or any of those kind of preliminary work on this to prepare for what could be something like that?
We haven't done that yet, but it is part of what we're aware of and why we've engaged with Parks, because we assume that they'll be able to help us narrow down where we might need to look and hopefully not have to do the entire 37 acres. That'd be great. We'll see how it works out.
Yeah, I was going to just mention that the cost on that is remarkable and important work. So,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
Yes.
Jane, you're up.
Yep. Okie dokie, lower the hand. I'll worry about that in a minute. 2 questions. One, we missed a really good pun just a second ago, Melissa, when you mentioned that the company has a good track record.
Yes.
I thought that
Yes.
was a great pun with the track. Secondly, what was this? The next step would be after we go through the process to approve and ask questions, then it's part of your agency recommended budget. Is that correct?
That's correct. We also
And
have a
then-
stop at CPAB, so the Capital Projects Advisory Board, before we make it to the legislature. But yes, go ahead.
And then what was the reception last time through the legislative process? Was it pretty well received? Do we have any big red flags that might come up in front of you on this proposal?
The information from the legislature indicated that we might have made it over the line from funded, not funded to funded, had we had a little better information. And so that's what
Okay.
we focused on a lot this year, is getting actually better information for them. So
Excellent.
I'm hopeful.
And then if you could, last point, but for my senile memory capacity, and also for Mayor Hoy, who has a brilliant memory, but she wasn't here, could you just briefly touch on what that earlier proposal was in addition to the track? I think there was air conditioning or something.
So the
But-
track, that was 2 biennia ago, that was for 23-25. So you would have heard about it in 22. And there was 3.5 million given to us in that bonding cycle, and that's all going to the track.
Okay,
So there were other projects listed as possible, but we know we're not going to have the money to do those.
thank you.
Certainly.
Mike, it's your turn.
Thanks. Well, it's a great presentation, and I was on that tour that we did a couple of years ago, and it was fantastic to learn the kind of the ins and outs of the facility and the programs, and what a great resource it is for the state. So you mentioned historic buildings and you mentioned state parks, so I'm sure the State Historic Preservation Officer will weigh in on this. Just 2 site-related questions. Do you know, is the property itself or a portion of the property eligible for a historic designation as a cultural landscape? So that's a mix of both buildings, walkways, trees, the whole enchilada, like the Capitol grounds itself is itself is a historic feature. So that's one question. And so I'll just let you answer that one first.
Sure. There are 2 buildings on campus that are listed as possibles for the historic registry, but they're not confirmed on the historic registry. So that's what got me engaged with Parks to begin with, is I went looking up that information, found it on their page and said, we should really talk to Parks. So we have.
Okay. Well, I would imagine as you get further in, they'll look at not just the buildings, but the immediate or even adjacent context as well. Second thing is more about, you talk about old significant buildings. How about old significant trees? Do you know if there are significant trees that where the footprints of the pavilion and the residence hall will go would be impacted? Or is that something that you'd also talk to state parks about?
Well, we talked to Parks about it for certain, but I can answer the historically significant trees question quite easily by saying that every class at OSD has planted a tree. And so we know where some of those trees are, and we have a map from a few years ago that we've added the newest trees to. So we do know where they are. And we're also aware that we can't work around all of them. So we'll work with the classes involved to find a different tree to plant in a different spot on campus to remain or move their tree, depending on how old it is and where it is on campus.
Sure. That's also, state parks can help with their arborists also to look at those trees and maybe say, hey, this one, if there's any way we could design around, that'd be great, but we understand those 2 or 3 need to be relocated or replaced or something like that.
Yep.
So that's a great storyline, having every class having planted a tree there. I don't remember hearing that before. That makes it a wonderful sort of arboretum of history.
Yes, very much so.
I have a question, unless you do.
No, I'm just, I was gonna ask if there's any other questions and
The railroad,
Yes,
are there, I have learned in my short tenure that the railroad is kind of in charge.
yes.
And that, is there any issue with anything that's going on and them?
Not to my knowledge, but we haven't talked to them yet.
Okay.
So there's this fine line between, we have this grand ideal and we have zero idea of what's getting funded.
Hmm.
So I don't, like, I'm not going to engage with ODOT or the trains or actually the facilities for the city about what we might do in this case if there's no way we're going to get the money.
Yeah.
And so, no, I haven't talked to them. We did have lively conversations with them during the derailment, but
Oh, well,
that's
And-
it.
and just to be super clear, this is the railroad.
That's the
here?
real, yep,
Okay, got it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
certainly.
is that all the questions we have? Yes. So. Let's try to begin our meeting. So procedurally, what the expectation here is that the commission would confirm the project's compliance with the plan and recommend for approval. And then it moves to CPAB for being as a budget item. So, but CPAB wants to have projects that are confirmed to be compliant with the area plans reviewed first before they see them. So that's procedurally why we're seeing this now and before CPAB. So essentially, you'd be voting on just recommending that the plan, the projects move forward as proposed because they are compliant with the area plan.
So we need a motion
With a motion,
for that. Does anyone feel like we're making a motion? I see Mike Abate's hand.
so Mike is a motion.
Not to make a motion, I have a question. I can do that during discussion if somebody wants to make a motion.
I'm gonna be the same way. So I'll second Mike's motion and then leave my question for discussion.
Okay,
Mike didn't make a motion though.
yeah, Mike didn't make a motion, so we need a motion.
I'll move
I'll make a
approval.
motion.
Okay.
I'll second Jim's.
No, Mike's
So
question.
we have discussion?
My question was just, Melissa, could you confirm that the pavilion building itself is in the area plan, the last area plan?
Yes,
Okay, that was just, I was just unaware and just want to make sure before we said that it was consistent. So thank you.
And my question is about the Cherry Street part of this. Is there anything in the proposal around what you want to have work out at Cherry Street that would cause us to have to look at this again for its compliance?
I don't believe so, although I will certainly engage with DAS facilities to make sure that that's the case. Because I'd be more than happy to come back and ask again and make sure that it works. I believe that it's number 6.
Yeah.
The word of that escapes me, but the priority 6, policy 6 says that we'll cooperate with everyone we need to cooperate in order to make things happen. And certainly the Cherry Street engines will require that degree of cooperation with lots of people.
Just one more point on it. The last time we had the discussion, some of the things about the way it interacts with the neighborhoods was some of the concern that we had. So
Yep.
if there's something that's going to affect it, it'd be great for us to have another look at it. And I mean, I'm going to vote yes on approving it with hopefully the idea that if there's something that you, in your best judgment, feel needs to come back for our review, that we have the opportunity to do that.
I am more than happy to make that commitment. I will talk about OSD with whomever, whenever.
Jane, you had a question?
Yeah, a quick question. So one of your neighbors obviously is Cap Chev and Cap Subaru, Cap Toyota. So when we're talking about that Cherry Street entrance, even though they're a bit north of you, they are the next nexus to you. And hopefully you can include them on a heads up about this.
Absolutely.
And sorry, just adding, they are light.
Yes, they have a light on Hagersville, whatever that is right there. Salem Industrial.
Mike?
Just a quick question. Is the new Cherry Street entrance improvements, is that in the $80 million budget? Or
That's correct.
Is that, okay, fantastic. Glad to hear that. Thank you.
Yes, and we're grateful because we have a construction company that could, or the construction contract administrator who could actually give us what that would cost. Not my magical guess of how much that might be. Right?
I call for the vote.
Right.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any
So just for
opposed?
the record, Jane votes aye, Mike votes aye, Jim votes aye, and Mayor Hoy votes aye.
Yep.
Motion passes.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Another hurdle crossed.
Yes.
Good job, Melinda.
It's in the 46. It's in the flyer that I just sent to me.
I'll send that document out.
Yeah, the document's hot off the press. It came in this morning.
Thank you for your dedication, by the way.
Absolutely.
I mean, what a gift you are to that community to not only present, but to be around long enough to understand things at a depth. That's valuable.
Yep. It's my intention when I retire to sign up for Friends of OSD, so I can keep doing that.
Good for you. That's awesome.
All right, our next project, our next topic is the Capitol Mall houses. We have Robert from Gas Real Estate.
Yes, thank you. Chair, members of the committee. We're coming to you pretty early on this one, so kind of the opposite of the amount of planning and preparation that went into the last presentation. We at DAS have been managing this series of cottages, heritage houses that are located on the very north end of the Capitol Mall. If you can see that visual, the red box kind of as an overlay, that's kind of the intersection in the corner that we're at. Maybe you're probably familiar with these. And then the image shows you the 7 houses that we have in that area of the Capitol Mall, and the nearest state building there is the State Lands building adjacent to the Stiff Jarman house there. There's a creek that runs through the middle, through the trees there, and separates the Stiff Jarman house from the remainder. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the reason that we're coming to you and talk a little bit about the houses, and then hopefully get from you some input and suggestions as we start kind of evaluating our options. Just whatever ideas you think of, or things you've heard of, or concerns you have as we're looking at them. So 5 of these houses are on the Salem Historic Resources Inventory. They are federally recognized as local landmarks, but they're not individually listed. And they were all relocated to this location from other parts of town to provide a buffer to the neighboring residential areas instead of a larger sort of state office building. Preserves also the landscaping around the creek and that part of the campus as a transition from the more intense office developments to that residential neighborhood, which also has historic listed houses in it. It is still within the boundaries of the Capitol Mall, so there is statute that guides how that area should be used and preserved to enhance and preserve the beauty and dignity of the areas and permanently secure the area from commercial and industrial encroachment. So it's meeting that quite well at the moment visually. But what we're struggling with is using those historic houses as office buildings. And that's become more prevalent now as we're going through this transition in the way that staff are working and using office spaces. those are small. Their interior layout is obviously residentially based. It had been a struggle in the past to fill them, small agencies, project teams, that kinds of thing. But as we're seeing now, we're trying to go to a sort of more shared spaces, transitional working, all these new things. And we're finding that the houses as office spaces isn't fitting in with that new style of work. And we generally have had low occupancy in those buildings and are considering other ways we can use them that might better suit that as an asset. One thing we have considered already and had people come in and look at is, could these be a potential childcare location? Unfortunately, again, their residential layout and their historic status makes them unsuitable. There are some very specific requirements and needs around providing childcare, and also the scale that you're providing that at doesn't neatly divide into the spaces that we have in each of these homes. So if you're trying to balance the number of children and the number of staff and the amount of space you need, you can't really replicate that within these awkward shapes. There's also concerns with having to stay on the main floor and not be able to use the second floor. So some of the buildings, again, would have a lot of kind of unusable space. So we looked at that as an early option. Unfortunately, they don't sort of physically suit that. But other than that, we are kind of open to suggestions, and I would kind of take any questions if you have any thoughts, but really just kind of opening the conversation to see what ideas we can hear. And obviously we'll take those away, we'll evaluate things, we'll try and answer questions and research, and then maybe at some point come back with a plan that changes that use and brings something different forward.
I have a quick question. Which of these homes are historic?
So the ones that are on the inventory is the Stiff Jarman one on the left there below the creek, the Huntington, Irwin, Adelson, and McGilchrist. So the other two, the Ford and Perry, are not on that list of historic resources.
That was 4.
So there's 7 houses total. Ford and Perry are not on the list. The other 5 are.
Got it. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I saw Shane had her hand up too.
Yes. Question, is the 885 Summer Street, is that the Criminal Justice Commission building?
So yes, the Criminal Justice Commission currently have space in 3 of the buildings. So the McGilchrist, Adelson, and the Ford building.
Okay.
We have, technically, Huntington has the long-term care ombudsman in it. The other 3 are vacant at the moment.
So then, thank you for that response. My second and last question is, I know that it was so important to have those homes on D Street serve as a buffer for the rest of the state buildings to the adjacent neighborhood. Is there any possibility that that can go back to residential properties, or is that just prohibited? It would still serve as a buffer, but somebody would have to be willing to, intentionally want to be there.
Right. So you're saying having the historic homes as residential? Okay.
Yes.
Oh, or that are along D Street, right?
On D Street.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're open to hearing options, and then we can start looking into what constraints there might be. I do know in terms of serving them, they are obviously sharing driveways, parking, utilities, things like that. So they're not sort of in a residential neighborhood. Each house would obviously have its own connections for everything, and they don't have that. So we'd have to consider exactly how we managed those and many other questions. But that's certainly something that we can look into further.
Yeah, because that way it could still serve as a buffer. And it's not like it was if we were going to build state buildings right up to D Street, and the houses to the north of D Street didn't have a choice of being adjacent to state properties. If those 4 homes were listed, a buyer would, knowingly buy into being next to state property. So that's it. Thanks.
Jim?
Thank you. One thing that comes to mind to me, and I don't think we talked about this the last time we talked about these houses, but like associations, lobbying firms, groups that are out of town but come into town and want to rent a, if there's 2,000 square feet, they maybe only want to have to pay for 500 square feet of it. But it seems like, because they end up actually, some of them are in the residential areas along Chemeketa and things that are closer to the capital. But this has got really good get in and get out kind of space to it. And it seems like it might be worth looking at all of them and seeing. I mean, you got the dental association and the ag groups, and all of them who have associations want to be in town, but they don't want to spend a fortune.
Yeah, thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, just to piggyback on Jim's comment, I was thinking about short-term rentals as a ongoing basis, especially for people or organizations who are coming into town for extended period of time, like during a session or something like that. So that was one thought. The other thing that the comment about parking and it's not all dedicated, we're kind of going back in a lot of ways. Some new urban forms are clustered housing where parking is together, not dedicated to, but it's in short walking distance, and things like parking and maybe even storage or garages are used more efficiently in a combined place. So I think that the urban form is actually pretty attractive for some innovative housing ideas. The second thought I had was, nonprofits who run group homes can be, I lived next to a group home for many years. It can be great neighbors. And so that was another thought. Are there nonprofits who might use this for a residential purpose? Maybe that in that case, it would be a long term. So there's just a couple of thoughts.
Thank you.
I had that thought as well. And I don't know what would be allowed in this area or not. But we obviously have a housing shortage, and the Salem Housing Authority may have some idea or input for you. And as Mike was talking, I thought about the need we have for mental health and addiction and places for people to go. We're way short on all of that, but just something to think about. Again, when I see it and I think about what I know now about limitations and the ADA and all the things, what would be a roadblock is what comes to mind in a historic building. But just anything's possible as far as I'm concerned.
What is the land use now?
I believe
PM. Sure, it's PM.
BNB
Public mall.
So
There's
it has its
a
own
public
overlay
mall
with
zoning.
it, so, yeah.
Basically, for most of the capital mall, it's called a PM zone in the city. And it's just meant for institutional use, even though that's always obviously been used for housing but that wasn't the intended purpose of it relocating there. So.
Right, no, they were set up on that site to be offices, which would fit within that zone. But like an institutional state government use. Yeah.
So anything that this group was talking about, would that fit within the PM designation, or would we have to pursue it?
We'd have to look at that and then see if there was a pathway to either a variance or something else that would let us have that use. That might be one of the smaller questions about getting permission to do that. So, but yeah, I think there's more questions from.
Yep.
Jane.
Yeah. Is it the Stiff Jarman house that was the former governor's home?
Testing. There is a binder somewhere that has newspaper clippings and all kinds of things about all the houses. And I think you might be right that one was previously a governor's house. Yeah.
I think it was. And so that would be the only one that, just for historical preservation purposes, I think the state should hang on to that as a state property, but I'm sure SHPA would weigh in on that for you.
Well, and I think being that they are within the boundaries of the Capitol Mall, there's a bigger question of actually transferring ownership of the land would likely take a statutory change to change the boundary of the Capitol Mall to allow someone other than the state to own it. So that would be quite a leap above, finding someone to use it, but it remaining in state ownership.
Okay, thank you.
So, oh, sorry.
You're up, Jim.
Go ahead.
So one thing that kind of jumps to mind when I look at this is I think, how does the state want to own these, given that we do, and you're going to always probably own these unless they somehow diminish out. Could you find a way in which you're essentially not going to get rent off them, but that you're going to have a very thick book of how people would own and operate them on your behalf, that it would allow them to have their cost be they're investing in making them work, but not have to pay rent? In other words, do you really care whether you get any revenue off them, or do you care that they are in tip-top condition and representing a lot of good things for you in the north end of the Capitol Mall? Has anybody really gone down? Because the last time we talked about these buildings, and we have, it was how do we make money off them? Because somebody was doing an ROI on them and going, we can't afford to keep them up, and on and on and on. But if you just looked at them as an asset, because they're all lovely homes in their own way, and they're a lovely buffer in their presentation. And if you just look at preserving them as opposed to making money off them. So I'm kind of throwing that up as a straw man.
Yeah, and I think at the moment we are definitely still not making money off of them. So being net neutral would be an improvement.
I think this is Betsy, just to maybe weigh in a little bit, and the reason I'm here today is for this discussion. Because, obviously we're going through a big transition and trying to, really, restock our buildings and use them more efficiently. And so this is, bringing all of this up again. And one of the things that we were considering was to, I would say it was a light consideration, we weren't down the road at all, but was to, use a property management company and to lease these out for residential or do something like that. But basically the back of the napkin was that would not be anything that looked like affordable. And it felt to me just like on the outs, just initially like that, it made me wince a little, just because it seemed like in this environment, is that really what we want to be doing? Like, we own these homes in this location, and it's in a sensitive situation with the buffer and with the neighbors. And do we really want to put ourselves in a situation where we have to charge like high rent? And it felt like this is very, very helpful just to like get some more ideas on the table, just to have some more options, because I report to the governor, and I didn't want to go pitch that. Let me just say that. So I just working with some more options, I think is helpful as we kind of kick this route. Plus, I'm sure you are aware, Representative Mannix has a long history with this property, and I think was responsible for getting the legislation and the books. And so he'll have, really strong opinions about this. And it's just it's a tricky one to navigate, but high rent houses on this, that the state owns feels very tone deaf to the moment. More options is good.
Mike?
In that regard, no matter if it's high rent or low rent, are you able budgetarily to take the proceeds from these properties and invest them directly in the property, or do you need special new statutory language, or because I think you have they're on one hand they're assets, on the other hand they're depreciating assets, and they're expensive. Single family homes, especially historic ones, are very expensive to maintain in good working order. And so I'm wondering, how does the funding work if you were able to rent these at a high rate, or maybe the way you do it now, can that money be invested into the properties themselves?
I think the answer is yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
This is part of their portfolio.
So one thing you might do, and maybe you've already done it, is do a life cycle cost analysis to get to how much money, if we're going to keep these in, if the state's going to keep these in perpetuity, what should we be allocating per year, over 100-year lifespan of the building or something like that. And then it's a clear case that if the objective is to retain these buildings under state ownership long term, here's the kind of rents that we would need to generate, or a subsidy would need to be provided to match whatever that number is. And so wonderful homes, but very expensive over the long term to keep operating.
Is disposition something that would not be possible? Do we have to own them? For the group?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the statutory language that brought them into public ownership in the first place and see.
Robert, is the idea that you would partition the land? Probably at Mill Creek and then.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you were going to say we were going to physically sell them, I guess that you'd need to partition at some point, whether you had an interim entity do the partitioning down to individual lots and you partition just that corner of them all. But yeah, if you were going to sell them for individual home ownership of each house, then there would need to be you could do, I mean, maybe, I know condos are a bit harder in Oregon, but you could do some kind of condo agreement that would mean that they could continue to have, like was discussed, the shared parking and shared amenities, but that each home could be owned by an individual. But that might be more in the weeds.
It'd be the home, not the land though, right? I mean, the condo idea is,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a complicated deal though.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know that.
Yeah, I'm just sort of brainstorming things that wouldn't require you to draw a lot line and separate out, who gets which piece of all of the different things that are on that parcel, and who gets the piece of grass under the trees by the creek, and who gets, so, yeah.
I wish Rep Mannix was here because I bet he could tell us all.
I will definitely be talking to him.
Okay. Jane.
Just because you're looking for ideas, there are 4 houses that are on Center Street, and you could have housing for legislators, the House, Senate, both R's and D's, and there are 4 houses right there. And they could all live together and they could make good decisions together. It would work really well.
Shared cooking.
I was thinking
I
when you
want
guys
that
made
ability to-
short-term rentals, I was thinking that.
Yeah, I think it'd be great, actually.
Outdoor fire pit with what's the word? Adirondack chairs, or rather, to promote after hours conviviality.
Yep.
Yeah, not knowing what even Kevin might say about these possibilities. I think, okay, you sell it. Now, how do you keep that person from doing something to it
Mhm.
that changes the historic status or whatever?
Well, and I think that's kind of the instruction from the boundaries of the Capitol Mall is we want to preserve the whole image of the place. And if you sell and someone decides, I mean, I guess the historic listing, if you were able to put a historic listing in place first, but the level of historic listing at the moment wouldn't prevent painting it pink
Right.
or having a broken car in the front yard,
Or hot
or
dogs.
any stereotype that you could think of for,
Use deed restrictions though. The state could be kind of heavy-handed in their deed restrictions.
right? But then we become the housing, the homeowners authority. We've got more maintenance cost and patrolling
You're
and
saying
enforcement.
No pink houses.
No pink houses, yeah.
An HOA.
We're running an HOA, which is,
But an idea of a ground lease might, long-term lease that retains state ownership might be an option that would would make some sense if you could find someone who was interested in leasing all of these and maybe do a nonprofit. So there's a public good that is, you know, definitely prevalent. And I think that some of the things you were just saying with selling them off, you have to find a willing seller or a willing buyer. And with all the deed restrictions and things, it might turn out to be, ooh, that would be maybe not be the most enticing piece of property you could buy.
Really helpful.
You can buy it, but you can't do this and you can't do that. I don't know, there's people with money who just might want that, you know, to be able to say, I own that.
Well, this is really helpful, I think, for us to get some more thinking on it. What are the next steps, you think? Come back with some options?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a few pointed questions that would need some research, and then some sort of thinking, put some numbers together, have some more conversations internally. So, yeah.
They're helpful for me. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Fascinating.
That's all we have.
That's it. Anything else, anybody?
I just want to make one announcement. We have initiated working with Hannaberry Eddy on the Capitol Mall plan, but right now we're in scope development. So pretty soon we'll have something to kind of evaluate and look at. But that's sort of an internal process we're going through right now. So
I'm just so encouraged to see the construction equipment start to leave. It's big.
Less and less every day.
Yeah.
They're a good firm. It'll be good to hear what they have to say.
yes, I'm optimistic. So thank you. That's all I have. So
That's it. All
I
right,
think we can
then.
adjourn.
We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, couldn't be there.
Would the Capitol Mall master plan get into taking a peek